Hello you guys, welcome back to a reading vlog. This is the first reading vlog of the new year, and I don't think I've done a reading vlog in all of 2026 thus far. So I'm excited to just read with you guys for a little bit and get through maybe a couple of books, hopefully, crossing my fingers. I had a really weird reading year in 2025, and I feel like I was kind of chasing this feeling of finding books that I was like absolutely obsessed with. I think in the process of doing that, I was also trying to read a lot of the books that I've been putting off for a while, so that obviously didn't help with like finding a book that I was obsessed with, if that makes any sense, because I had been putting these books off for so long. I don't know if it was like anticipation or if I just like had been putting them off because I knew they were not going to be 5 stars or what it was about it. But it's a new year and we started off the year pretty strong. I have 2 books that I've read so far. One of them I did not read and one of them was a 4-star, but I like literally could not put it down. So I'm excited and a little terrified, I'm not gonna lie, because I think I know what book I want to read next. I just have been nervous to start a fantasy series just because I haven't in a really long time. So without just skirting around it anymore, I think I want to pick up One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. This one has been on my list for a really long time and I've heard nothing but good things about this book. This has really high ratings on Goodreads, like I think an average of a 4.2 star rating, which is very high. I try really hard to like come up with ideas myself instead of only looking at Goodreads for like what other people have rated something, but I do think it's important to like know that I'm gonna enjoy a book too based off of like other people that I follow that read similar books to me. So this is a fantasy series. I think it's a romantasy series from what I understand, but I honestly don't know too much about it. I'm going into this one a little bit blind, but I think that I'm just gonna go for it. I think that's what I want because I tried reading the description on Goodreads and I was a little confused about exactly what it was about. So we're just gonna try. We're just gonna go for it. I do know that there's 2 books in the series. I actually have them on Libby and they're gonna expire soon, so I need to read them ASAP. But I have them both, so I figure let's spend a couple of days reading these books. I hope to get through them quickly if they're that good, which I'm, crossing my fingers. I hope that they're that amazing. Yeah, and that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna start. Today is Monday. It's my lunch break right now. And what better way to have a lunch break than to read a book? I'm gonna just get into it, get some of the details, and hopefully I can give you guys a little bit of a better synopsis on what this book is about. Hello you guys, it is a bit later. It's about 8:30, so I have about an hour before I want to be heading off to bed. I actually didn't read nearly as much of One Dark Window as I thought I was going to earlier today on my lunch break. That's okay. I got like halfway through the first chapter and then my lunch break was over. But basically so far, what this book is about, it's a fantasy novel like I mentioned to you guys. And it seems like there's some kind of sickness going on, and basically if you get sick, your veins turn black and you possess some kind of magic from what I understand. So I think our main character, I can't even remember her name right now, but I think she gets sick and so she possesses the magic, but she is like trying to convince herself that she doesn't have it because it seems like there are these other characters in that same world who, if they know that you're sick and so therefore you have this magic, they basically take you away. That's all I've gotten from it so far. I think that this one's a romantasy, so we'll obviously get more into it, but I just wanted to update you so far on like what I have read and like the half of a chapter that I've gotten into, just because I feel like I got a better description in that half of a chapter than I did on the Goodreads synopsis or like the little blurb. So I'm gonna try to read for the next like hour or so. I don't think I'll get that far, but we'll see. And hopefully we'll just learn a little bit more about what's going on in this new world. Good morning, you guys. Today is Friday and I have not done nearly as much reading as I thought I would have at this point. It was just a very chaotic week for me and I didn't read as much. But we're gonna spend some time doing some reading this morning. It's like 6:30, so I have like nearly 2 hours before I need to be online for work. Something about this book that has nothing to do with the actual story contents, but on the Kindle edition, I don't know why, but I borrowed this book from the Libby app, so like from my library, and the pages are wrong. So there's like 100 more pages than what I thought that there was. I don't know why. Like up until the very last chapter, everything is correct. And then in the last chapter, it switches to like 315 or something like that instead of like nearly 400. So the pages are off, and so this whole time I was like, I feel like I'm reading this book so slow, but it's because there's 100 extra pages that I would have to get through. So there's that, but it is really good so far. I'm on chapter 5. I think it took me a second to like understand what the magic system was and all that kind of stuff, because there's like these cards that our character can see but other people can't because she's infected with this like disease or sickness that is going around, but she's obviously trying to hide it because usually in this world, kind of reminds me of Powerless in that way. If you have this illness, then there's like a group of people who will like come and take you away and, from what I understand, kill you. So she's hiding from that, but right now she's at this like big festival at the king's house, and it is a romantasy, so I think that she's gonna probably end up falling for the guy who's like in charge of those people who like come and get you if you're sick, because it's a fantasy romantasy novel. Like, why wouldn't she fall in love with that person? Honestly, I think that's kind of all I have to say about it right this second, because I am still so early on. I said I'm on chapter 5, but there's like 30 or 40 chapters, so that's very, very early. So yeah, I'm gonna read a little bit before I have to get ready for work and learn a little bit more about our characters. I'm finally in the phase where as I read each chapter, I don't really want to put it down, so that feels really nice to be so invested in the book. Those are my thoughts, so let's get to some reading. Hello guys, it's been a second. Today is Saturday and I wanted to give you guys an update on my book, One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. I'm officially on chapter 10. I think something that was interesting about this book at the very beginning was that I feel like there was a little bit of info dumping. Not really info dumping, more like there's so much information that I need to know about this world that I didn't have, and they do slowly give that to you. So not quite info dumping or lore dumping, but more like you have to be okay with the first like 4 chapters of just like living in a little bit of an unknown, which can be difficult for me when it comes to a new book. The world is not hard to understand by any means. It's not super complicated or anything, but when you just don't know what's going on, it's kind of hard. So now that I'm on chapter 10, I'm officially 100 pages in, and I totally get it. I know how this world works now. I know the magic system, all of that. So I feel like I'm now flying through it. I've also now been introduced to our main love interest, which is very exciting. They have a couple of different like little things happening at the beginning with different men, I guess you could say. And now I officially know who the love interest is. And I feel like there's a lot of intrigue as well when it comes to what's going on in the story, because it's not just about a girl who has a special power and is trying to save the world or anything like that. It's more that like something weird is happening in this kingdom and she could be a puzzle piece to help figure out what's happening. So I really like it a lot so far. I feel like I've heard this book hyped up a lot and I've been really nervous to pick it up because of how much it's been hyped, but I like it. So like I said, I'm about 100 pages in. I have like 8 hours or something like that to read, so we'll see how much we get through this weekend. But I also already have the second book and it's only a duology, which is very nice because sometimes with fantasy novels, I also feel like I get caught up in like, now all of a sudden I have 8 books to read, and that can be a lot when I have other books that I'm very interested in. So I'm excited that this world is big enough where there are 2 books, but it's not like, again, an 8-book series. I'm gonna go sit outside with P. I'm gonna enjoy the beautiful weather. It's supposed to be nearly 80 degrees today, so it feels like a spring summer day and it's so lovely outside. So I'm gonna sit out there, read for a little bit, and then we'll give you guys any updates about this book. Okay, you guys, I've officially made it to part 2, chapter 15 of my book. Something that I really am liking about this book is I feel like we were going in a direction with like, you could already kind of tell like what the main story is going to be just based off of like what's going on in this world and all of that kind of stuff. But there's always going to be like a main adventure that your main character goes on, and you know, the whole premise of the book, I guess is what you could say. But there's almost like an interesting twist to that premise. So there's like multiple premises, if that makes sense. So that's kind of a cool idea. Like, I like that there's multiple things happening at once and all of these different storylines are almost being like tied together in a way. So it's like making it so much more than just like I don't want to call it a one-dimensional story because it's not fair to other books to call them that, but like there is like an overarching theme of like, here's the direction that we need to go in, here's what's going to be happening. But on top of that, there's like these extra layers of what else is going on in the world and how they're potentially going to achieve the thing that they've been looking to achieve. So I really like that a lot. I actually am like curious to see how this is going to wrap up and then how or what the second book will even be about, because obviously I'm like not super well, I'm 40% of the way through the book now, so I am a decent chunk into the book. But I guess what I mean is that like I'm not even close to like knowing if there's going to be a cliffhanger or like how the book is going to end or like what potential conclusion we're even getting close to. So I guess I just wonder if book 2 will just be a continuation of this story and then that will be the main conclusion, or if there's going to be a conclusion here and then something big will happen and that's why we'll need a second book. So I guess we'll see. But I'm going to keep reading for a little bit longer. It's like 9 p.m. right now, and normally on weekdays I go to bed around like 9:30. Since it's a weekend, I'm gonna try to stay up a little bit later, but I'm already getting kind of tired, so I might head to bed soon and try to finish this book tomorrow. I am officially 62% of the way through this book, and I'm on chapter 23. So we're almost into part 3 of this book. There was something that was going on. Sorry if you can hear that. P is literally playing with a branch over there. I don't know if you can tell. So if you can hear that, I apologize. Basically, this whole time, our main character, she has something going on because she has this like infection that's going on in this world. And usually if you're infected, they take you away and ultimately kill you. But it seems like there's a couple of infected people that, like, she herself is infected. Nobody knows, but there are a couple of infected people that the kingdom is sort of like using to their advantage, if you will. So anyway, long story short, she has something going on internally is what I'll say, because I don't want to like ruin anything or spoil anything. And I had an inkling of what it was. Like, I feel like they were already giving us so many clues about what was going on exactly in her head. And now we officially have the answer. Honestly, I really like the direction that this book is going. I just feel like there's so many little bits and pieces, and the romance isn't too heavy where it just is feeling kind of like annoying. Like, I feel like it's a slow burn in a really good way, because there's so many elements to this fantasy that I think that it would be too much if they also like threw in this really, really heavy romance. So I love the balance of everything. I love the way that like just the direction generally that things are going in, and just like all the little mini hidden things. Like, every word almost matters with this book, and like how they say something in particular, because that can later be a reveal. So I just really like it so far. I have just basically been sitting all morning. It's noon now. I've been sitting and reading. So I'm going to continue reading, and I think I have like 4 hours left of the book. So I really do feel like we can probably finish it today, which I'm very excited about, because I want to get to the second book, and we already now know why it's called One Dark Window, which is very exciting as well. So overall, I'm really enjoying this one. I feel like it's probably going to be a 5-star. Like, I honestly don't have any issues with the book at all. Okay, you guys, I wanted to update you because I'm on chapter 32 and I want to say probably like an hour left to read of this book, max, like probably less. I have about 4 chapters left, and I don't remember the last time I checked in with you guys, because this book has just been so fantastic. I'm like actually obsessed with it. We're at a point in this book where I really think that the second book is just going to be essentially a continuation of this book and like what's going on in this journey in this series, which I'm actually extremely excited for, because I think that if they would have tried to wrap up what they were doing in this book, it would have been way too fast, and I think that I wouldn't have been as into the characters as I currently am, because I've had so much time throughout all the stuff that's going on to spend with them and like to really get to know them. The romance really picked up around, I want to say like the 65% mark in this book, which for me felt kind of like the perfect timing. It didn't feel too rushed. It didn't feel way too slow burn. Like, it was honestly just perfect. If I didn't already talk about the atmosphere, which I don't think I have, because truthfully, I again have just been like failing to update you guys because this book has just been so good and I've been just reading it nonstop. It almost gives me the same vibe as like Bridgerton, except fantasy. So like there will be all of the women who are like walking around this little area in the king's castle or like in their gardens. Meanwhile, something else is happening and like they're sneaking around the castle trying to go find something, which is just so fun and interesting. Like having this feel almost like a period piece but fantasy is something a little bit more unique. Like I think that there's tons of fantasies that have kings and queens, but not in the exact same way that they're having them all talk to each other and interact with one another. Like it truly feels so similar to something like Bridgerton, which again, personally, I think is a little bit unique and a fun way to have this kind of society and world interact with each other, despite the fact that there is this fantasy element to it. So again, really loving it. I really want to see how all of this ends because we're at this like pivotal point where our main character has kind of been omitting the truth, like not quite lying. Well, she basically has been lying, but I think that now some of the people are like discovering what's actually happening to her, and literally no one knows. Like she has a secret that some people know, but she has another secret that literally nobody knows about, and I think someone just discovered what's going on. And so I'm so intrigued to see what they think of it and how the rest of this plays out, and also then like what that means for the second story in this duology, because I don't know how they're gonna take it, and I'm sat for this one. This is such a good book. I feel like I've always seen that this has extremely high ratings on Goodreads, and that's part of what has made me nervous to pick it up, but it's so worth it. I really, really think that it deserves the high ratings. I want to just sit here and read for a little bit. It's my lunch break right now, so I think that I can finish this on my lunch, and I'll give you guys all of my thoughts afterward. Okay, you guys, I finished One Dark Window and I'm giving it 5 stars. It was so good. I love the way that it ended. I love that it just immediately is going to lead into the second book. And I feel like with how much there needed to get done in this book, I just feel like it would have been way too much to complete in one book. So I'm really glad. Like this is a use case in which I think a duology was great for this story. So I'm very excited. I also feel like the romance was perfectly paced, where it wasn't too much romance within this fantasy world. And I actually feel like I spent enough time with my characters that it felt like they actually were falling in love, instead of it feeling like love at first sight, or they've just like spent so much time together that of course they're gonna fall in love or whatever. Like I just feel like it made sense. I really love that, like in a sense, people aren't really safe in the series. Like I'm sure that for the most part no main characters will die, but I do enjoy the direction that we're going in with this whole story. And I obviously don't want to give any spoilers, but I had an inkling of what was gonna happen. Once you're reading it, I feel like it's like kind of obvious, but I saw a lot of reviews online on like Goodreads and stuff saying something about how people didn't really enjoy our main character. And I was thinking a little bit about it because I saw that maybe like halfway through the book, and I feel like it makes sense for who she is. Like the way that she is because of the way that she's grown up, and I think that it would not make sense if she was that type of protagonist that is super good at fighting or like randomly like against all odds beats everybody. Like that just is not who she is. And I think that like being scared of things and asking for help and that kind of thing is just like true to her core and like the person that she is and who she has had to become because of everything else going on in this world. Honestly, I really feel like there wasn't really anything that I didn't like about this book, so I gave it 5 stars, and I'm so excited to start Two Twisted Crowns. I've been kind of like waiting all day to start this because I had a couple of other things to do, and this was sort of my reward to myself. So I'm gonna start it now. It's 9 p.m. so I'm probably gonna end up falling asleep, but I'm gonna start it and hopefully get into what's going on in this world and what's gonna happen next. I'm trying to, as best as I can, update you guys, but especially since this is the second in the series, I really like to be careful with any kind of spoilers. So I'll continue to update you, but just a heads up that I really don't want to give any spoilers. But I do recommend the series so far. I'm really loving it. Hello you guys, it's been a sec, and today is Thursday. I fear that I am doing the same thing this week as I did last week, where I pretty much didn't read my book like nearly all week, and then come like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I just like binged. But we're here. Actually, we're 9% into this book, so it's almost exactly the same as what happened last week. We're still early on. A couple of things about this book so far. The chapters are from different perspectives. So rather than it all being from one person's perspective, it's coming from a leader of one thing and then a prince from another thing, and like just different perspectives. And so sometimes that can be hard for me if the book wasn't already like that, or the series wasn't like that in the first book. I do like getting different perspectives, generally speaking, so I think that in the long run I won't have an issue with it. But at times I feel like if I'm already used to like, oh, this book is from X person's perspective, I tend to have trouble with remembering which perspective I'm in if it starts to switch up too much. So that's just a me thing. I think once I get into it, like I said, I won't have as much trouble with that. I'm also excited to see like what in general is going on. I enjoy that not much time has passed between book 1 and book 2, and that it's basically a continuation in the sense that like one big thing is happening and there's sort of like 3 things that need to be found or discovered or whatever. And the first 2 happened in the first book and the third one will happen, I assume, in the second book. I just like that it just feels like one really long book and it's just like written a tiny bit differently. Just like gives a good mix up on what's happening. Lastly, I do think that there's going to be another romance, which I wasn't really expecting and I'm not sure how I feel about yet, because I just think that the romance that we have right now is not fully fleshed out. I feel like it's still pretty early on in that romance, and so I feel like I would be very excited to hear more about that. But I think we're gonna get a second romance, so we'll see. I'm just speculating for now, but that's how it seems. So I'm gonna take some time. I'm going to read for a little bit. It's about 8 o'clock, so I won't have too much time to read before I head off to bed, but I wanna get at least a little bit done. So let's do that, let's read, and I will update you guys on all of my thoughts. Hello you guys, I wanted to give you a quick update on Two Twisted Crowns. I feel like for both of these books, the first like 100 pages or so, for whatever reason, felt a tad slower for me. I was still like really into the story itself, but just for some reason it wasn't like I wanted to binge. And then once I get past the 100-page mark, I'm like, oh my god, I just don't want to stop reading this. So I'm past the 100-page mark. I'm like 25% of the way through. We're learning some new things about the Providence cards in this series, which is really, really interesting because I don't want to get too in the weeds about like the magic system, but basically there's these 12 cards and there's a certain number of each of the 12 cards around in this world. And one of the cards is this like, they call it a maiden card, and it basically just like makes whoever uses it beautiful. But we're discovering that there's actually more to the card, which is so cool. I actually really enjoy that because it's this interesting take on how men see women as well, which is kind of cool. I'm just gonna continue reading for today. We only have a few plans this weekend, so I think we'll do a lot of reading, which is gonna be very exciting because I've been really, really enjoying this series. I feel like, depending on obviously how this goes, like book 1 was definitely a 5-star, so this could be a 4 or 5-star series for me. Like I would absolutely recommend this to anybody who remotely likes fantasy. And I know that it's tagged as romantasy, and there's definitely like romantic elements throughout, especially in the second book. I feel like the first book there were fewer. The second one I feel like it's a little heavier between a new couple, but it's not like overly smutty like the end of Akatar is. Like that is just like too much for me when it comes to romantasy. Like at that point it's just like basically not fantasy anymore. For me, I really enjoy that there's like this little slow burn romance and like this little flirting between our characters, and like that is actually very fun. So I'm really enjoying it. I like the series as a whole so far. So I'm gonna keep reading. I hope to finish this weekend like I was saying, and I'm excited to see how everything plays out because there are so many things at stake right now and I need our characters to be okay. Like I need, in this book, I know that like typically I don't always love a happy ending in the sense that like it's so cliche and like obvious that that's how it's gonna end. But in this book, it's more like I would be okay with it ending that way. I just want to know how we get there. Like how are we gonna get to where we're at right now to a happy ending in 300 pages? That's gonna be insane. I wonder if someone is gonna die on the way, or if they don't, it's probably gonna be a close call. Like so many things are happening, so I'm excited to dive back in. Just a quick update. I am still like 30% of the way through, so I'm not super far in comparison to when I last checked in with you guys. But I think at the very beginning of this book, I was kind of saying something along the lines of like, I don't love when perspectives shift in books. Like if it's an entire series that's not like standalone books, then if all of a sudden like book one was from one person's perspective and then book two changes to dual perspective, I just like, it's not my favorite. However, I will say, even though that's exactly what happened in this book, now that I'm reading further, I see why they did that way, because their perspective that we were in for the first book wouldn't make sense for this book. And if we didn't have the dual perspectives, we wouldn't have a lot of information. So I actually think that it makes a lot of sense, because we're starting to get into a situation where we're in two separate locations, and so we need the dual perspective. Now it all makes sense, so I'm grateful for it. However, I do still stand by, if it's not a situation like this where it's clear that there's a reasoning as to why they've changed something like that, then it's really not my favorite. But for this one, I think it makes sense and I like it. I honestly really like this author's writing. I feel like her writing is just so fantastic. She uses the right words when she needs to, and every word that she chooses feels very purposeful, which I really enjoy, but it's still very easy to read and like fast paced, which is also great, because sometimes people will just use such specific words that feel, I don't want to say pretentious, but kind of feels pretentious, where it's like, okay, you could have just said they walked down the street, but instead you said XYZ thing. So I don't feel like she does that. I feel like everything is purposeful, everything is methodical, it's still fast paced, and I'm really enjoying it. So we're 30% of the way through. The goal would be to get to maybe 60% today, which I think that we could probably do realistically. So hopefully we will be able to reach that. And if we can go beyond, then that would be even better. But if not, I think we'll be able to finish this by this weekend based off of like the pacing of the book at this point. Hello you guys, I wanted to tell you a little bit more about Two Twisted Crowns. I'm almost 50% of the way through and I'm on chapter 28 right now, and I feel like we're learning more and more. Our main character from the first book, we're getting some more details about her, because she is still a main character in this book, but she's not a perspective that we get in all of these chapters, so it's a little different in terms of like how we get the information that we're getting. I feel a little confused though, because from what I understood, I'm trying to say the thing that I want to say without giving any spoilers, but one of the characters that we know is technically related to another family, and that family is related to like the King's family, like they're cousins. And so if at some point they got married, that means that the cousins married each other, I think, which is a little strange. I don't know if I'm like reading into that incorrectly, or if it's not actually tied in that way, or if like later down the line they became cousins, or what exactly happened there. But if they were always linked, I guess they could have been linked in like later generations. That would have probably been the case, but I don't know. It's an interesting linkage, is I guess all I'm really saying. The only other thing that I really have to say right now is that I feel like in some of the chapters, because we're getting multiple perspectives now, I feel like the romance between two of the characters is like really heavy, and I don't know that it actually does much for the story. I think that it could be an interesting side story, but I don't think that it needs to be their whole story, and it feels very much like it is. Like I feel like whenever those chapters come about, like that's kind of all we're getting, and I don't know if this is just because like the popularity of being a book that's on like Book Talk or BookTube or whatever, like you need to have like good romance, but I feel like in this case it's not really like doing much for the story. So I kind of wish that that would take like a back seat and we can get back into this like quest that they're on, because the first book was so good about like the pacing and how the romance was involved in the story without being too involved or like taking over the story. And the romance is fine, but I just feel like it doesn't need to be as heavy as it is, or like as important as it seems. Anyway, I'm hoping that this book picks up a little bit, because I've noticed that, again, I'm nearly 50% of the way through, and with the first book I kind of experienced the same thing, where like the first 100 pages were a little bit slower, and then the next like 300 pages were so fast paced for me and I did not want to put it down. Whereas this one, like once I'm reading it, I feel that same sense of like I don't really want to put it down, but it takes more for me to want to pick it up, and I don't feel that same urge of like, oh my god, I need to know what happens, because there's almost like too many pauses between everything going on and like the shifting of perspectives. So it feels like something's like missing in this book. I don't really know what though, because everything is still great. It's just not, I think it's just the difference between like a 4 and a 5-star book for me, at least. Like I can can tell already that this one's probably not going to be a 5-star, whereas the first one was like for sure a 5-star. So that's sort of where I'm at right now. I'm gonna keep reading and get through as much as I possibly can tonight because it's already 8 o'clock. So I have about an hour left of reading before I need to head to bed. I have like 6.5 hours left of the book though. So I thought that I would be able to finish this by last week, and I just did not read nearly as much as I thought I was going to. Again, I don't know if that's because of like the pacing of the book or if that's just because of like how busy I was this weekend. So I'm hopeful that we'll finish it like within these next few days or something along those lines. Anyway, that's all I have for right now. Hopefully we'll get some more reading done and I will update you along the way. Okay, I'm not too much further into this book, but I have something that I want to say, and it's a little annoying. I don't love when an author cannot kill off a character. Like, it just bothers me because sometimes it makes more sense, even though it's sad in the moment, it makes more sense for a character to be killed off in a story, and it just like helps with the story progression versus it feeling like everybody's invincible and in reality everybody will be safe and like nothing's going to actually harm anybody. And it just kind of like irritates me a little bit. Like, it makes me feel like it's a bit of a cop-out. There's something that happens and it mimics the past in a way from like 500 years ago, but somehow miraculously like they're able to solve it and like make it so that this one person like potentially doesn't die. And I don't know how I feel about that. Like, I don't necessarily want the character to die, but I think that for story progression it would actually make more sense if she did. So I don't know. It's interesting. I'm not saying that it's bad, I'm just saying that like sometimes I respect when a character can be killed off. So let's keep reading. I only have 3 hours left of the book. That's crazy. And also it's the end of the series, so that'll be that once we're done. I'm actually like kind of sad to be away from these characters, but I do still feel like now that I'm in this book and like deep into this book, we've gotten way more romance from this book than the first book, and I liked the love story of the first book more, but it feels like this book is like so heavy on the romance. So many of the chapters are about the romance that happens in this book, but it feels like we're then just like missing out on, I don't know, it feels like we're missing out on like part of the adventure of like the main part of this book, or like the main reason this book exists. I'm being vague on purpose, but I think if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. So anyway, let's keep reading. What? Okay, I just got done with chapter 41, which was a Raven chapter, in case you're wondering, which I haven't said that character's name actually I think all videos, so maybe if you haven't read this book you have no idea what I'm talking about. The thing about this is that they make it like pretty clear that one of the characters is like a descendant of another character. I even mentioned it early in this video when I was like, oh, if these two people got married, like would that not mean that like at some point they married their cousin or their relative of some kind, but it's so distant in the past that it's not actually, like they're not actually related. And they're making this like really big reveal as if we're just finding out that this guy is like a descendant of somebody else. I don't know, I'm like a little confused because I feel like some of the other things were pretty cool, like seeing something very specific happen with some of the cards and things like that. But other than that, I just feel like that wasn't actually a reveal. And so for it to be positioned as this like crazy reveal is just kind of, I don't know, it's just, it wasn't actually a reveal. So I don't know, we'll see. I'm gonna keep reading, but that was, I don't know. I feel like if you were paying even mild attention, you would have seen that coming. And I don't really think that that was a secret. And so for, maybe it was supposed to be like an internal reveal, but I feel like then that should have been revealed through something else. Like I feel like this character, especially with how smart this character is, should have already known this. Like, this should not have been groundbreaking information for him. I don't know, maybe that's just me. Let's keep reading. Hello you guys, it's been a second and I wanted to update you guys because I finished 2 Twisted Crowns and I wanted to give myself a second before I gave a full review because I have some thoughts. Actually, let me grab my phone so I can tell you. I had taken some notes in the last like hour of reading the book because I just like wanted to get through the book, but I wanted to make sure that I told you guys all of the things that I was feeling. So I'm just gonna kind of run through this little list that I have and try my hardest to not give any spoilers, and then I'll give you guys my final rating. But I think I said this in an earlier clip, but I feel like they put a lot of weight on one of the families not knowing who they descended from. I feel like it's interesting because I believe it was in the first book they had mentioned that like there's these ruins behind behind their castle and that the ruins were from an old king. But then later they're talking about it and they're like, we shouldn't tell our family where we descend from. And I'm like, do they not already know? I don't understand how they wouldn't know. I don't know. I just feel like that piece was a little confusing to me because I feel like it wouldn't be hard for them to piece together. Yeah, that was just one thing that I felt like was kind of like, I don't know. There's a couple of things in here that I'm like, I don't think I really loved in comparison to the first book. I didn't love the time jump that there was. There was this like massive time jump that felt like what happened was that there wasn't enough tension in the story. And so they needed a time jump so that it would feel really tense and like our characters were at the end of their rope essentially. But I feel like the way that it was handled in like a narrative way was not the right way to handle it, in my opinion. I feel like it would have made way more sense if either the deadline was different or the whole story was just shifted. But this time jump just like, it just didn't make any sense. It really felt like bad planning on the narrative, like in the whole story. There was also like a fighting scene and out of nowhere, something comes in to help fight. And if you guys have read it, you know what I'm talking about, hopefully. And it's not a human. And it felt again like so convenient that this thing now is able to fight alongside them. Like, I don't know, just like it felt like there was a lot of convenient things happening basically. Like between the time jump and that, I don't know, I felt like it was like a really easy fight all of a sudden. They just added this tension by adding this time jump and then released the tension by making it an extremely easy fight. Like it just didn't really make sense to me and I didn't love that part. I feel like there was a lot of discrepancies too. Like one of our characters were in her chapter, but she calls her dad by her full name, but everyone else, she's like my uncle, my whatever. And it felt really weird because she's never called her dad by her full name. So I don't know if they were trying to show that she just doesn't really have a relationship with her dad anymore, or if it was just like an accident and like that should have been edited better. But it just felt like it didn't need to have her dad's full name. Like it got to a point where I was questioning which chapter I was in and I was like, oh my gosh, am I in the wrong perspective? Like did I think I was in her perspective and I'm actually in someone else's? But the reality is that it just was confusing, so I didn't love that either. And these feel like nitpicky things, but these are the things that take me out of a story and just make me not enjoy it as much. So I think that it's fair to criticize these like things that feel really small because that's for me what makes a book like not as enjoyable. I also didn't love that there's like this magic system that has to do with cards and the whole point of the story is they want to get rid of the cards, or like they want to get rid of the mist that is in this world that is causing this infection, and ultimately like the king and the whole community, they're not wanting to accept the infected people essentially, and so if you're infected you get killed off. At the end, something happens with these cards and I don't like the way that it was handled. I just think that if we were going through all of this journey that the outcome would have been a little bit different, and I'm trying so hard to be vague, but I just didn't like that piece. Like it made no sense to me with how the magic system worked. Yeah, I don't know how else to say it without giving the actual spoiler, but I just feel like everything that we went through in this entire story was going toward this like thing that was supposed to happen, and then it didn't fully happen, like it half happened, and so then it kind of felt like a cop-out and I was a little confused by that. So I just feel like it didn't make sense for what the magic system in the world seemed like it was. It made me a little bit confused and kind of question like why the author would even choose to do it that way. Two things that I thought were positives. One of our characters, his mom dies. Like this is just how it is in the story. Like we go into this story, chapter 1 of the first book, knowing that his mom had died in the past, but we don't know how she dies and we don't really know fully what the relationship between him and his mom was. I can't tell if it's because it's not important or if it's because it's supposed to show how he has this like disconnection to his own family, but I think if it's the latter, to give the author and the editors the benefit of the doubt, I think that that's a really clever way to show that someone is not as connected with their family. Like if you're super connected to your family and your mom dies, like that's going to affect you so deeply, and in a story everyone would know how that person died. So for us to not have that information, I think was a very clever way to tell us that he was actually not very close to his parents or his family in general. And then the second one was that someone gets like very, very injured. And even though this is a romantasy novel, and so you like kind of know that things are probably going to turn out okay, I find it so fun and like so much more thrilling when you feel like someone probably is going to die. And like there is that question in the back of your head of like, maybe he doesn't survive. Maybe like everything else turns out great, but it's a bit of a bittersweet ending. And I really, really loved what they did with that like scene, and just like allowing us to question whether or not he was actually going to survive, and if he needed to survive for the end of the story to still feel overall good. I thought was very well done and fascinating. So I liked that part a lot too. But those were all of my thoughts. I know that like, I feel like an overwhelming amount of them felt a little bit negative in comparison to the positive ones. Like I really only had 2 positive thoughts at the very end of the story. But I do want to say that overall, I think that this whole series is probably like a 4-star series in terms of like the unique magic system and the way that the characters read and the way that the romance was handled in comparison to like the fantasy elements of this book and this series, and just the way that the kingdom and like that aspect of it was handled. Like I keep saying, Bridgerton vibes. I loved every single moment of that. I loved being in this world. I loved the magic system and like how unique everything was, and it just felt very different from other fantasy novels that I've read before. And I like, as silly as it sounds, that it's just a duology. So after the second book, you get everything wrapped up, and I don't feel like this needed to be a 7-book series where now I'm kind of like exhausted by this like continuation of like a war happening and then everything's fine and then a different war happens and then everything's fine again. Like sometimes that gets too repetitive. So I think that the way that the 2 books were split up too was so perfect. I do think though that at the end of this book, like I felt like I was never compelled to pick it up, and once I was reading it I was enjoying it, but I was getting distracted very easily, and there were little elements that I didn't super love. And so for those reasons, I feel like I wanted so badly to give this a 4-star, but I feel like it's kind of leaning toward a 3. I don't know. I think I need to think more on it. I tried thinking pretty hard on this over the last few days. I'm truly between a 3 and a 4. Like in some ways this is a 4-star, but the last chunk of the book, like probably the last 40 or 50%, I was just like not loving. So for those reasons, I feel like I can't give it a 4-star, but I think I would give the whole series a 4-star. So I don't know. I think it's between a 3 and a 4, and I'll probably end up rating it a 3 only because if 50% of the book made me feel that way, I don't think I can give it a 4. But I really did enjoy it, and I do highly recommend it. I think that this one would be, specifically the second one, would have been really nice as an audiobook, because I think that some of the parts that felt like they were dragging a little bit long would have been easier to like listen to and would have felt faster paced in an audiobook. So this one might be good as an audiobook, but that's just my opinion. And usually if I'm like kind of dragging in a story, I prefer it as an audiobook because I can literally speed up the time. Whereas when I'm reading physically, I'm a little bit of a slower reader, so I'm in those scenes for a lot longer. But I don't know, maybe that makes me feel more connected to the characters too, which I know that sometimes, especially with like romance novels, I just feel less connected to the romance if I listen to it as an audiobook. So I think you'll just have to like decide for yourself on like whether or not it's better to read it physically versus listen to it as an audiobook. But that is the end of this video. I had a really fun time reading this series and finally getting into it, because I feel like this has been on my list for a very long time, and I saw it all over social media for so long, and then I feel like that wave kind of died, but I never forgot about wanting to read this series, and I'm so glad that I did. I feel like for wintertime this is so perfect. So if you guys are still experiencing any serious weather, I think this could be really good for right now. I mean, a fantasy novel is good anytime, but I just feel like the vibes sometimes, like it's like a misty dark kind of vibe, like very gothic almost. Like, is gothic the right term? I don't know. I feel like that makes sense. Like very dark and like, yeah, misty. I don't know how else to say it. So like fall time or winter time I think would be, if you are a bit more of a mood reader, that would be the best time to read it. Those are all of my thoughts on this series. So thank you so much again for watching and being here with me. If there's anything that you guys want me to read, feel free to leave it in the comments below, and I should have some more reading vlogs for you coming soon too, which I'm very excited for. Otherwise, I also always have vlogs Tuesdays and Fridays. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye guys.